Owning your own home or property in general is a dream shared by most people. However, only a tiny percentage of us can buy or build property straight from pocket. So tonight, as a follow-up to our conversation with an industry insider last month, we speak to those who have used home loans to become the proud homeowners they are today. Later on in the show, in our continued bid to show you that your health is not only your wealth, but contributes to the economic prosperity of the nation, we learn about the highly preventable condition that is the heart attack, finding out that they do not always present themselves as dramatically as we have seen in movies, making them even more deadly. Welcome to First Issues. Welcome back to First Issues as we discuss all that's associated with getting a home loan and purchasing a house. A little while ago on the show, we made a case for property as a long-standing and trusted form of investment. Our research having shown that no other investment has such an array of factors stacked in its favor as a long-term home ownership, as it can appreciate in value over time, provide equity, immediate returns in the form of shelter, security, and personal satisfaction, as well as long-term returns such as providing a source of income at retirement age. But many Botswana are frustrated by the rising cost of property, a situation that the Botswana Housing Corporation has said it is aiming to address. As a corporation that aims to promote home ownership and citizen empowerment, its performance figures are telling of the local environment. Their 2014 annual report details how, despite reducing its profit margins on products in some areas in order to make houses attractive to buyers, and their attempts to accelerate the home ownership drive through the Sitting Tenants campaign, the corporation only managed to sell some 290 housing units during the 2013-2014 financial year. 47% of those houses were sold to government. Their target had been 1,036 housing properties. Admittedly, the problematic Pakalani project, as well as Mopani Estates in Francistown, stalled the sale of 701 of these properties. But still on the topic of sales, the corporation does acknowledge that the affordability levels of their existing customers is challenged compared with the mortgages the banks can offer. Just 2 weeks ago, we spoke with the Permanent Secretary within the Ministry of Lands and Housing, Mr. Thato Raphaga, on such matters.
We shall be starting with the installment purchase scheme, which we want to kickstart this financial year. We shall also be starting with housing for youth. Again, we would want to start it this financial year, especially in and around Gaborone. We believe that this will unleash, the potential of the market, or especially from the Botswana Housing Corporation side, to provide housing that may, to some extent, be affordable to Botswana.
Shala Mading from within the banking sector assured us recently that banks are indeed eager to lend a helping hand.
Where an individual wants to purchase an existing property, we're able to offer them finance to facilitate that. There are instances where somebody has a plot and they would like to develop and actually have a house on that plot. We're able to facilitate in those instances.
We are now joined by property consultant turned homeowner Galen Moss Khan, as well as a brand new homeowner, health and safety specialist Tebogo Maule. Both these ladies bought their homes with the assistance of a home loan. Was it easy or difficult for our guests to make the decision to take on a commitment as long-term as a mortgage? What were some of the considerations they had to make?
It was very scary, I must admit. The night before I actually had to sign on the dotted line, I was a bit nervous because I was like, oh my goodness, you have to pay every month. It's a big responsibility. But, I just thought to myself, you have to do it. It's a very good opportunity. And I did it, and I never regretted it since then.
I had to adjust a few things in my life to accommodate a home loan. But I knew it was for the better, because if I calculate the money that I was putting on rentals towards the money that I'm putting on, there wasn't much of a difference. I could own a home So if I can afford to rent, definitely I can buy a house on my own.
Once you've done it and you've got a bank that's behind you and assists you the whole way, it's a beautiful thing to be able to own your own property, because it assists you in terms of if you need a second bond for anything personal in your life. It's helpful. It's always good to have your own property.
Tebogo says compared to her previous experience getting a home loan through a different institution, the process of using this facility this time around was much more pleasant, proving that the right partners can make what can be a difficult process a pleasant one.
I had identified a house, and then I went to the bank. I asked for what's the process to get there. They gave me a brochure for me to go and read because the person was busy. I gathered everything before I went back to the bank. So when I went there, I submitted and then I filled out the form that you gave in Francistown branch. And then 2 weeks later, I got a call from Gaborone that we've seen your papers and then we are processing. And then the very same night, I got an SMS of approval that your lane is approved. I said, just like that.
It's not an easy thing. It was very difficult. It was not difficult in the sense the process. It was a difficult decision. I had to make sure I was ready. You have to be ready financially. You have to be ready personally. It's a huge decision. So you must make sure your finances are in order. You must make sure that you're buying the right investment. It's a difficult decision, so you must make sure you partner up with the right people to make it as easy as possible. So the right representative from an agency, a right representative from a bank. Make sure you've got backup that really can assist you because they have the professional experience, and yeah, it's always best to have that backup. It makes it so much easier because it is a difficult thing to do.
Many of us are familiar with the housing adage, location, location, location. An aspect Ms. Mading says is a consideration even your bank will make when evaluating your loan application.
The other thing that an individual has to consider is obviously the location of the property that they would want to invest in. So although we have various areas, I could say you have your Block 3, you have your Extension 9, you have your Broadhurst in Gaborone, you find that the value at which the properties appreciate is different.
Some people still say, however, why buy when you can simply rent?
So with renting, you end up not having anything at the end of the day. So with buying, for instance, when my situation is I bought it for a very good price at the time, and if I resell it now, I will make a small profit, which means I can always invest in something bigger as the family grows, perhaps if I have more children, that sort of thing. So it's always helpful as well if you own a property, if you need to take out a second bond, for example, if you need it to expand the property, or if you need it for something personal, if you have elderly parents that you need to help. There's always something with property that, you know, if you own it, it can assist you a lot in your life.
Our guests have some prudent advice for those of you now considering taking that plunge and getting a mortgage from your bank.
Don't stretch yourself too far. If you know that you can afford 5,000 but the bank says 7,000, don't go to that 7,000, rather stick to the 5,000. Don't stretch yourself because you don't want to lose the property at the end of the day.
Sit down and look at the years that they've been renting, calculate the amount that they have accumulated, and they make decision based on that. If you can give somebody that money, why not invest the same money in your own house?
Welcome back to First Issues and the second segment of our program this evening. It has been identified that the unhealthy eating and exercise patterns characteristic of the age we're living in have made the so-called lifestyle diseases the #1 killer in the world. That is over war, road accidents, HIV/AIDS, and cancer. Of these illnesses, cardiovascular diseases, that is those relating to the heart and blood vessels, account for most non-communicable deaths, or 17.5 million people annually. That is more than double that of the second leading cause of death, which is cancer, at 8.2 million people. Previously thought to be a problem for the developed world, now almost 3/4 of non-communicable deaths occur in low and middle income countries. This is an issue we need to pursue because not only is there a loss in human capital, but there are growing costs to economic output and a crippling healthcare burden for both developed and developing nations across the globe. According to the World Health Organization, the exorbitant cost of these illnesses, that includes the often lengthy and expensive treatment and the loss of breadwinners, is forcing millions of people into poverty every year, countering development efforts. Botswana has not been exempt. Therefore, we are now joined by regular First Issues commentator, Professor Kieran Bagat, and his patient, marketing executive, Bobby Rushforth, to teach us more about one of the more serious results of an unhealthy lifestyle, the heart attack. Bobby's story drives home the fact that unlike what we often see in the movies, a heart attack does not always result in a sudden and dramatic cardiac arrest. Symptoms can include pressure, tightness, pain, or a squeezing or aching sensation in your chest or arms that may spread to your neck, jaw, or back, but also include nausea, indigestion or abdominal pain, shortness of breath, cold sweat, fatigue, lightheadedness or sudden dizziness, or as in our guest's case, heartburn. The more signs and symptoms you have, the greater the likelihood you're having a heart attack.
6 years ago, I had a bypass at Moorpark Hospital in Johannesburg. It was picked up by my cardiologist in Gaborone, Professor Bagat. The funny thing is, and it's a question you just asked me, I didn't feel anything, and that's the biggest problem. I had very bad heartburn. I had been on blood pressure pills before, and for quite a number of years for high blood pressure, cholesterol. I smoked a lot, too much, about 80 a day. I luckily stopped drinking many years ago, but I always suffered from what I thought was heartburn and reflux. And everything happened on a Saturday. The Thursday, I went down to Professor Bagat, complaining bitterly about pains and everything, but it was more reflux than anything else. He did scans, he did everything, and there was absolutely nothing showing. Thursday night, 1 o'clock in the morning, I went to a private hospital. They put me on a drip. They did a whole lot of tests, the same ECGs, blood pressure, blood, everything. There was absolutely nothing wrong, according to both the hospital and the professor. The Friday, I was still dying of this reflux, heartburn. I went back to Professor Bagat. He tested again, he did scans, he did ECGs. My heart was showing absolutely nothing wrong with it. And I've been doing this for many years, so I knew there was, I looked at the scans. But anyway, from there, 2 o'clock in the morning again, Friday, well, early hours of Saturday morning, I was back at the private hospital. They called in another doctor there, or a specialist. He checked, he did ECGs, he did everything, still found nothing. The Saturday morning, I was really now dying of reflux. You know, it was acid coming into my, it was just terrible. And I went down, Professor Bagat again did the scanning, the ECGs, and he drew blood. And somewhere in the blood, there's something showed, enzymes, or there was an imbalance of enzymes which indicated something was wrong with the heart. That was on a Saturday afternoon. The Monday I went through to Moorpark Hospital for an angiogram because we still didn't know what was happening. I went, booked into Moorpark, went for the angiogram on a Tuesday morning. When you have an angiogram, you can actually lie there and you can watch the computer on the roof when they put the tubes through you and the cameras. I was watching this, and the next thing, a cardiologist at Moorpark, Patel, pulled the machine across my face so I couldn't see anything. And he asked me, do I feel all right? And am I sure I'm all right? And am I worried or anything? I said, no. He says, well, there's a big problem. You've actually had 8 heart attacks. But not at the one time. When I had the one with the reflux and that was a heart attack. But I'd had over the past, they say that it looked like about the past 7 or 8 years, another 7 heart attacks before the last one. Never felt it, didn't know about it. It was probably some sign like reflux, heartburn that I'd been having for years, that it didn't worry me. But I never ever got chest pains, so people must be extremely careful. It's not always the big chest pains and that are the killer. It was reflux. Anyway, they then took me straight from there because they couldn't use stents, they couldn't use balloons. There was nothing to do. The bottom piece of my heart was totally no blood, and I needed a bypass. I lay at Mill Park for 3 days before the bypass because there were certain blood problems I had to sort out. And then I went in for the bypass. And it's not nice. You actually feel no pain. But they do warn you before you go for the bypass that you've got a chance of not coming out of the theatre. You might just remain there and go straight from there upstairs. If the old man is calling, he wants you. And luckily, even though I was so unfit, I smoked so much, I ate so much bad food, I did everything, I survived. Someone upstairs was looking after me.
It appears that Hollywood has miseducated us by making us believe that a heart attack always manifests as a strong, sudden pain that forces someone to clutch at their chest and collapse. Professor Kieran Bhagat clarifies further as to what exactly a heart attack is.
It's often confused, and when we talk about heart attack, we see it on many American movies, and basically a heart attack is where the heart itself is being attacked. And it's being attacked because the heart itself, just like the body needs oxygen, the heart itself needs oxygen. And these little tubes that supply the oxygen to the muscles of the heart, because the muscles of the heart are the engine of your heart. And if the muscles of the heart are not supplied with oxygen, supplied with glucose and nutrients, they begin to starve. And as these tubes reduce the supply of oxygen and nutrients to the muscles of the heart begins to complain. And what it complains of, in the way it complains, is pain. And the pain you get is classically on the left side. It's not a pain like a knife, it's a heavy pain. It's like an elephant is sitting on your head. It's a pressure on the chest. It's like somebody squeezing you. And it occurs particularly when you're physically exerting yourself. If you're walking up some stairs, if you're running after a combi or a bus and you suddenly start getting this pain, it means that there's something wrong with your heart. If it's a sharp pain, it generally is coming from the bones or the back or the muscles. So that's a general qualifier in terms of what sort of pain heart attack is. And heart attack basically is where the tubes that supply the oxygen to the heart become blocked. They become blocked with a buildup of cholesterol. Cholesterol are the things that we eat. The fatty foods, the fried foods, the things we talked about before, the oily foods, the fast foods, the junk foods we're talking about, the things that come in boxes, the things that are made by the food industry, the fizzy drinks. We should have no shame in saying fizzy drinks, sugary drinks, fatty foods, fried foods, processed carbohydrates, the breads, the rices, the spaghettis, all the white foods, they're all basically dangerous. The whiter the bread, the sooner you're dead, we always say. And what happens is that cholesterol begins to build up and begins to deposit on the inside of the artery, and eventually the caliber of the artery begins to narrow, so the supply of oxygen begins to diminish, and eventually it cuts off suddenly and you get a heart attack. So that's what a heart attack is. So now if, for example, we say that this particular artery was blocked, it means the artery supplies this muscle begins to die. And as the muscle begins to die, it begins to fail. So another cause of heart failure is heart attack. Because once you've had a heart attack, often if you come too late to the hospital, that muscle has died and is irreparable. So you are then relying on the rest of the muscles to overcome the lack of power in this particular region.
What can our guest say the entire experience has taught him that he can pass on to all of you watching this evening?
My advice to people that is watching the show is visit your doctor, listen to him, and remember I had 8 heart attacks and didn't even know about it. I knew absolutely nothing. I would say to the people watching, misspent youth had a lot to do with it. When we're young, we do stupid things. I was a heavy smoker. I was a heavy drinker in my youth. And it caught up with me in the end. I ate the wrong stuff. I did the wrong stuff. And in the end, it catches up with you. And when it catches up with you, it really catches up with you. And if you're going to carry on the way that I carried on and have a bypass like I've had, there's one thing I'd recommend to everyone, and that is that they took out insurance to pay the hospital bill. Because a hospital bill is not a joke. Pomade did do very well in paying for a lot of it, but there's a lot of things that you have to pay for yourself. And it's good to have an insurance policy to cover you for dread, they call it a dread disease policy. Lucky I had one. I was able to pay it, but as I say, today I live a totally different life. I'm more awake, I'm a better person. And yes, please, people, be careful, especially when you're young. According to the thoracic surgeon, the cardiologist in South Africa and the cardiologist in Botswana, my problem was a misspent youth. So it's not something that it started at an older age. It started by being a rebel when I was young and doing all the clever things that youngsters do, like smoking, drinking, partying, eating the wrong stuff, doing stuff that they shouldn't do. But luckily I made it.
As we conclude our program this evening, remember that heart attack symptoms vary. Some people have mild pain, others more severe pain. Some people have no symptoms at all. Some heart attacks strike suddenly, but many people have reported warning signs and symptoms hours, days, and weeks in advance. That means it does not hurt to be overly cautious. Until next week and another issue of interest, I, Nametso Samakula, the team behind First Issues, and our sponsors, First National Bank, wish you a good night and pleasant viewing.